Hello, welcome to the Elevate Dataviz Show, episode number 32. Hello, everyone. We're here to explore current topics in data visualization, share our creative inspiration, and the tools and techniques that we're experimenting with as practicing information designers. Today, we are talking about a very interesting topic. It's about when a project is actually done, when you call it quits. Maybe you've been working on a project and you just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking until you feel like there has to be a stopping point, right? So in this episode, we'll talk about the signals that we are looking out for that tell us, hey, this is probably time to call it quits. I'm Allie Torben.
Oh, just before you carry on, Allie, I love how you say call it quits, not like have a congratulations party because you've done it. Like it's
probably it sounds kind of negative. You're right. What's a better way to say that?
Before you declare victory? I don't
declare victory. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this episode, we'll talk about the signals we're looking for before we call victory, declare victory. Thank you. This is live edits. Okay, I'm Ellie Torben. We also have Duncan Gear and Will Chase. And before we jump in, this show is supported by the members of the Elevate Dataviz Learning community who get the opportunity to watch and ask questions live. So if you would like to do that and level up your Dataviz skills in a very lovely and supportive community, you can check out elevatedataviz.com. Okay, so one actually interesting thing that maybe we can talk about for a second is, I guess the reason why I said call it quits is because to me, like the final tweaking feels like torture.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't get that like satisfying ending. Maybe even a lot of times. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, how are your Dataviz projects ending typically? Where it's just like, oh God, just ship it. Like I can't do anything else to it anymore. Or is it more like, yes, very nice, thank you. Declare victory.
The classic joke is that you have the first 80% of the project, and then you have the second 80% of the project.
Yeah.
It's squished into the last 20%.
Yeah, I definitely sympathize with the feeling because, like, I think I tend to get into that phase maybe sooner than I should, into that phase where I'm like, in my mind, it's done, even though I know I still have the second 80%, but I've mentally been done. So
is it because I know that we're just doing last tweaks. The bones and the intention is there. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And I think
it's in my mind.
Yeah, it's something I've struggled with, I think, throughout my career, that I've been very like open with, like telling my boss, like, by the way, I'm not great at finishing. I'm not, that is not my strength. My strength is starting things and
ideating.
Yeah, ideating, doing that first push, doing those initial spikes, getting like the thing into fruition.
Solving the problems.
Yeah, solving the problems, exactly. But, I know full well that it's never done at that point. There is that second 80%, which is what really makes it like a polished, finished product.
And so often that's the difference between like a project that's like, yeah, that's good, and a project that's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Right. But but I think, Allie, to your point, like, because that's the part that I enjoy, the part that I enjoy is the ideating, the problem solving, the initial push, once that's over, I'm like, sometimes mentally like, all right, can this be done now? Like, so it is hard sometimes to get through that second part,
which is really hard when you're working solo. But I mean, when you're on a team, then you can kind of see where you fit, right? Like, I'm really good at the beginning part, and there's some people who may either don't like the ideating part, like they don't like they're not sure where this is going part, but they like the executing part. Like, let me just sit in Adobe Illustrator and I'm going to move my pixels and I love it. And that might be a really good place for you to think about, maybe I should be on a team because I am really bad at that last 80%.
Yeah. If you can find that, if you can find a person that complements your skills in that regard, I think it's invaluable. That's actually, I'm very lucky right now. I have that set up. So there are two of us product designers working at Observable right now. And I happen to be more, we both can span the full gamut. You do have to be able to do these things and push yourselves. But I think our sort of natural inclinations are that I tend towards more of that initial spike part of the process. And my colleague is definitely one of those people that's really excellent at, all the diligent, careful work that it takes to finish something off and make it excellent. And so we often work like that.
How do you think this maps onto that quite common dynamic where some people are sort of perfectionists, whereas others are more like
good enough?
Good enough, exactly. Satisfices.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because although like the part of the process that I enjoy, like I don't super enjoy all of that finishing work, but I don't know if I'd describe myself as a perfectionist, but I am quite particular, I guess, in the way that things are done. So I don't think I'm the kind of person actually that is just like, oh, all right, good enough, let's just ship it. So I'm not sure that there's actually, you'd think there was a close correlation.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. Because I think that, so one of my most frequent collaborators is Miriam Quick, who I run the Loud Numbers data sonification studio with. And she's very like, I don't think she'll mind me saying this, that she's a wonderful perfectionist. She will always be trying to like do the best possible job we can possibly do on every project. And that's great. Whereas I'm a bit more like, let's hit the deadline and then like move on to this next exciting thing that we want to work on. And I think having that kind of like push-pull dynamic is great because it means that we do hit our deadlines and we also polish quite well. But I think I agree with you, Will, that it's not exactly mapped onto the thing that we're talking about here, about people who are interested in that first ideation part and the people who are very, very focused on like getting it looking great before it goes out, I guess is, maybe Matt, calling it the first 80%ers and the second 80%ers is the way to frame this.
Yeah, I think that is a good way to frame it. And maybe, it's almost like the second 80%, I am quite particular. Like I want it to be done a certain way. Maybe I just don't want to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm more of an idea person too. And it's like, now I got to sit here for hours and, tweak it and stuff. And it's just like, I can't do that. I just want to see it done. I have a vision for it being done, but I don't want to be the one to do it. I get more of my energy from being able to think of new ideas. So maybe it's like the introvert, extrovert thing. Like, where do you get your energy?
Yeah.
Do you get your energy from the first 80% or the last 80%?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it is definitely also like, I think it's different type of work sometimes. So to that point, I think there's a lot of like that early, the first 80% is, I think, often more collaborative. It's more, you're doing brainstorms, you're throwing out ideas, your research, you're talking to people. That second 80%,
linear.
Yeah. And that second 80% is a little bit more, like I mentioned before, or I described it before, kind of like the quieter, diligent type of work where maybe you're, you might be working on your own and just kind of, it's a lot of iteration.
Or kind of like getting it out to testers and things like that. And then they're coming back with feedback and you have to sort of make tweaks based on that feedback and everything. Yeah, I mean, I find that second 80% is often where a lot of the compromises in a project happen, where you are trying to kind of like meet several goals and those goals are fundamentally incompatible.
Yeah. You're getting that push from the client. Well, weren't we going to try to do this? And maybe we can add this extra variable, or what about we put some extra text around it? And you're just like, hold on a second.
Yeah. Well, I mean, working with clients, then that's maybe another topic to get into a little bit, because a lot of times that is where more of the problems come up, like you said, Ali, in the second 80%, because it could be 10%. And then after feedback from the client, it becomes 80%, right? So I guess, how do you deal with that thing where you have maybe a deadline, you have a set amount of work you want to finish, and all of a sudden it starts expanding or taking longer, either because of just normal, that's how work works, or because of, clients changing their mind. And
I mean, one approach that I've experienced many times, which I do not recommend in the slightest, is letting it get up to about a day before the deadline before you send anything to the client.
Ah, gosh.
That can often shut down some of the wildest ideas.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
sorry,
necessarily,
we literally have no time.
it doesn't necessarily create a happy client on the other side. So don't recommend that.
It is kind of like a compliment sometimes, because they think what you have created works so well. Let's see if we can add more to it and make it better. So sometimes it's more of like an education thing. It's like, no, this is good because doesn't have too much. So sometimes I have said that a lot. Like, I think that,
simple.
It's people can read this and get it immediately, or, it doesn't take them long, or whatever the goal was that we intended and we succeeded at. And then instead of adding more, I can note to them, hey, this is actually going to take away from that first thing that we achieved already. So a lot of it's, first of all, taking it as a compliment, because I think, instead of being like mad, being like, oh, they just think it works really well and just want to keep the good going, So educating them that this works because we had a deft hand.
Yeah, well, I like what you said about sort of going back to the beginning, reminding them, like, here's why we did this. Like, here were our goals when we set out for this project, and then kind of go through what has been delivered. Like, does this meets the goals because of X, Y, and Z, So are we going to turn it into something that we actually don't want it to be if we keep going, or if we keep doing these other things?
Have you both come up against the situation where you have clients that have a focus more on that first 80% or that second 80%? I think I've had situations where clients have been focused on the first 80%, and you show them a sort of draft version. They're like, great, this looks done. Like, when can we put it out, sort of thing? And you're like, oh no, there's a lot of things I want to fix here. Yeah, kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's true, which is also a compliment, right? My garbage work looks done.
Or alternately, ones that are so focused on that kind of polish end that you show them something that you think is more or less there, and they're like, there's a lot of things that we need to fix here. It's this and this and this, and you're like, yeah, no, we're gonna do that, but they're disappointed when you show them that first version.
I think I have mostly seen the latter, where I have to be very careful, like just reiterating, because people have seen your final work and then they see some weird sketches or, some screenshots from Tableau. Stuff. Yeah. And you're like, I just want to know if the bones are okay before I spend all that second 80% cleaning it up. And they can't imagine it. Like, they don't understand why you're showing that to them at this point. Like, I just thought you'd be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I guess I experience that maybe more now, actually, working in a very different environment. So, now I'm working in product design, where when you're designing software or an app or something like that, there's never a done, right? I mean, Microsoft didn't say, okay, we're done, and then they've just been sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Excel is done.
Right? Yeah. There's always the next version. There's always features you want to add. There's always things you want to change. And so it's not so much like a deliverable, like a chart where you can say, this is finished, it's going to go out to the world, and that's the end of it. And so actually the thing that I've often struggled with in product design is that knowing that something is basically never done, you have to decide, when is it done enough that it's the benefits outweigh whatever the drawbacks are. So, okay, this feature has reached a point where we know it's not perfect. We know we want to do these 10 other things to make it even better or make it even more useful. But should we just release it now, get it into people's hands? They will get some benefit from it, even if it's not perfect. And then we'll keep adding later or keep refining it. So that's a really hard point to judge, I think. And then the other thing that's really difficult is managing expectations with the people that you're working with, because you'll show them something for feedback and say, by the way, we know this is just an MVP. We know we need to do all these things, but inevitably the feedback you're going to get is like, well, why didn't you do this, this, and that?
Why are the colors like this?
Right. It's like, we know that doesn't work.
But you can't list that stuff out, and they also don't know that you know. So it is kind of a tough situation on both sides, because it's like they can't read each other's minds.
and it's one thing to do that internally. Whether you're working with a client, you can of course tell them, yeah, by the way, I know that it doesn't, the font sizes aren't quite right yet. I'm going to keep working on that. You can't tell that to people when you publish the project. Like when we send this feature out to users, we can't give a giant list of caveats of things we know we're going to, by the way, we're going to do all this in the future.
Don't worry.
And the same thing with a chart. You can't publish a chart with a giant list of bullet points that's like, by the way, here's all the stuff I could do if I had more time.
I mean, I like, there are a few examples of publications that will effectively patch charts over time, right? You've got maybe like Our World in Data is an interesting example, because they will constantly be updating their work with new data sets and adding extra context and things like that. They, you might start out with a very short article and then detail gets fleshed out over time and maybe more charts. I think that's a model that would be interesting to explore more broadly in the Dataviz scene, where you put something out that is solving the problem, but maybe could be better, and then you come back to it on a recurring basis to make it better and better and better.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when Will was talking, was like, sometimes there are projects where you can have the iterative mindset, like, don't worry, we're coming back. But then there's also some projects where there's not. It's like, we're printing this in this magazine, this issue of this month's magazine, and then the time is going to have passed and we're not editing, we're not reprinting it. And knowing the difference maybe is a good tip, is thinking, is this one of those iterative things, situations, or is it one of the non-iterative situations? And then, you're branching off your decision making based off that.
Yeah, is this going to be carved in stone?
Basically. How many chances do we get at this?
Like, I'm sure a lot of our listeners or members at Elevate build dashboards as part of their work, and that's a good example of something that's most often those are iterative processes. A dashboard is, the idea of a dashboard is that it lives and it updates itself, and it's something you come back to again and again and again. And so
ideally that you maintain it in response to feedback from your users as well.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can, like Duncan said, add to it. You can tweak things, polish it. You can make it even something completely different. You can say, a year from now, we're going to release version 3.0 of this dashboard, and it's going to totally revamp it and change everything. We used to do that at Fidelity. And I think it's then the question of like, that you posed, Ali, like, is this useful now? Or like, it comes back to what's the purpose of it. So if this dashboard is meant that, okay, our business leaders look at this every morning to inform themselves about what's happening in the business, then sure, you can keep updating it. If the purpose is, we're building this dashboard and it's going to be a public facing thing for a marketing launch of a new service we're building or whatever, well, then you need to have something, you have a day that you need to launch this for your marketing campaign. And so it has to be ready on that day. And you can't necessarily say, we'll come back to it a few weeks later when nobody cares because all the buzz has died down.
Yeah, right. We missed our chance. Cube says we do that too. Our product has live charts on every piece where we keep adding and improving layout and features in the chart embed over time. The larger product experiences stays the same. Actually doing a full redesign on the charts while the related reading experience staying the same, more or less the same. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You are doing kind of that maybe a middle ground where you're doing some parts are staying the same and then you're iterating on the design of the chart aspect. And I like what you said, Will, about, again, coming back to the goals. So, when you're done, when you achieve the goals, but then maybe someone has come and mentioned, hey, maybe we can kind of add this extra thing. I would, before allowing the last 80% to expand, one thing I might want to try or suggest is for us to do some testing. Okay, let's see if we can test this on our intended audience, some subset of our intended audience, and see if they indeed are missing this extra thing, or this particular graphic achieves exactly what we wanted to do, and it's not worth extending the deadline because no one's noticing anyway, or something like that. So knowing when something is done, I think one of the tools in your toolbox can be, if you're getting pushback to add more time, to actually test it, because maybe they don't believe themselves and they don't believe you. So they need a third party.
Ask people, test your hunches.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point with testing, because the analogy to that, I guess, is when I was working in more like product management roles, there's a huge focus in that job around decision making, because that's basically what that job is, make decisions. But you're frequently faced with these cases where, okay, we have option A and option B. We've gone through our decision-making process. We've weighed all the pros and cons. We've done our research. We've followed the rabbit holes. And, there's still not a clear decision to be made. So we could keep investigating more. We could do whatever little, even more exercises, trying to convert things to like numeric values of how beneficial this one will be versus that one. And there's some people that tend to get really twisted up in that idea of like, somehow I can make the perfect decision if I just do enough stuff. But my managers at the time were like, it doesn't matter. Like, just pick one, and then you will test it by building it and putting it in front of people, and you will find out if that was the right decision or not.
You got to take a step forward first.
Yeah,
and definitely in a kind of situation where you are making sort of lots of charts on a continuous basis, you can do that kind of learning work, especially when those charts are, have similarities between them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're deciding, oh, I could make this as a tree map or a bar chart or something, and what are the pros and cons of this? You could go around in circles forever, or you could just make one or make both, put them in front of people and see what happens, see what the reaction is. And probably by the process of going through making them, you will realize a lot of things about, what might be the advantages of this, or which one might be right in this case.
Yeah, that's what makes Dataviz so hard, is there's often not one true answer, one true correct answer. It's a lot of times you're just like really just weighing pros and cons, and sometimes there's like no difference in the weights, or like very minimal. So it's hard.
Or one approach will work for one of your audiences, and another approach will work for another of your audiences. Like, this is a classic thing where you maybe have a client that wants you to make something that is, I don't know, let's say intended for policymakers to understand, but they also want the general public to be able to understand it, kind of thing. And, the policymakers are going to want more and appreciate more detail, perhaps, but the general public will struggle with, technical terms and things like that. So it's quite difficult, and you do have to make calls sometimes about which one of these audiences are we going to prioritize. And it needs to be audience-led, those decisions, like which of these audiences is the most important.
Well, that's I need, speaking of finishing, I think that's also like the times that I've found it hardest to finish projects is when you don't have that clear audience or goal in mind, and you're just saying, or you are trying to serve everybody at once. Basically, you're in the situation like you described, Duncan, and you say, well, what if I could do something that was perfect for both the general public and it met all the needs of the policymakers? And there's such a desire to do that, because of course that would be great. And maybe it's possible, but more often than not, it leads to this situation where you're trying to satisfy everybody, you end up satisfying nobody. Or you end up going on this project forever and ever and ever, because in order to do that, you need to add, infinite amounts of stuff and go through all this research and testing.
And then people start complaining that it's too complicated. And you're like, but I was trying to solve for everybody.
Right. You have to do round two,
back
round
to what
three.
We had before.
Often it can be best to just make two versions, like you said earlier. Make the tree map and make the bar chart, and send them out in different contexts. Like, that's absolutely a viable thing. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you both is almost flipping the question around. How do you know when it's not done? When you are at the end of the process and and it isn't quite feeling right? How do you navigate those conversations?
I was also thinking something like that too, where I was thinking sometimes you're just looking at something and you're just like, I don't know what's wrong, but something is wrong and something is off, and that can just really bug you. Like, I know this isn't looking good. It's not done, but I don't really know where to go. And I feel like my number one thing is to ask someone. So someone whose opinion I trust, like someone in the Elevate group, like, I don't know what's wrong. Just look at it. You tell me what's wrong. I'm not going to give you any instructions on what I need. Please tell me what's off. And a lot of times you guys are just like bing, bang, boom. And then I'm like, oh, duh. Like there's all this extra space on the side, or the colors, the contrast wasn't high enough, or something like that. Usually just getting a fresh pair of eyes from someone who knows what they're doing can be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely, in terms of knowing like this isn't ready or like this isn't good enough yet, I think that feeling for me at least is mostly like a gut thing that comes back to taste. And I guess the question I always ask myself is like, would I be proud to show this to people? You know, if I put this out into the world, would I want to brag about it and tell people I made it?
Yeah.
Or
would I post it on LinkedIn, or would you be like, don't tag me?
Would I be like, oh, I don't want that on my portfolio. Like, I don't want people to see that. If that's the feeling you have, then it's a sign that like this is not ready, or this is not up to your standards. And I think the other thing I was going to say is ideally you notice that far in advance and not like the day before, and you're like, uh-oh, this isn't ready.
So earlier the better. You can be getting feedback.
Like, what do you do when you notice that that's not ready, or this is going to take longer than you think? I mean, of course it depends on, is this a hard deadline? Is this a soft deadline?
Yeah. What's the relationship with the client? Like, is this a first project you've done together, or have you done like 10 things or yeah.
And in general, of course, again, this comes up all the time building software, because everything takes longer than you think it will. And I think, to me, like you always then you have the decision of, okay, well, how can we get this thing out on time? We can either sacrifice the quality, or we can cut the scope of the project. And to me, the better decision is almost always to cut the scope. Like, I think quality is something you never want to sacrifice because of that reason, that you don't want to put something out there that you're not proud of. But you might be fine to put out this data story you've been working on, and you just, cut one of the sections because, well, that's not as important. It'll still be a good story even without this extra section that I thought was fun and cool, but it's just, we don't have time for that. So we need to spend that time polishing and further editing to get this up to the quality.
Yeah. Do you feel like the benefit of the main message getting out there is more important than some darling section that you have that is not ending, you can't figure out how to get it to work?
Yeah.
I mean, we did this, I think I've told this story before here, but we did this in the first season of Loud Numbers. We originally had 6 episodes that we wanted to get out. For those that don't know, Loud Numbers is the data sonification podcast that I released a few years back. Thank you. And we had this story that we really, really wanted to tell about Brexit, actually, and where we were going to have the number of articles being published about it over time in different newspapers, and like opinion polling data, and it was going to be like all the no's were going to be like horns, and all the yeses were going to be like strings, and it was going to be like we had like this really nice vision for it, but it just wasn't coming together, and it was sort of, we were getting up to the deadline, because that was right, Miriam was about to give birth. That was
hard our deadline.
Yeah, really hard deadline, about as hard as it gets. And so we just made the call, we're just not going to do it, and that's okay, and it's been fine. Like, we never made it, and we probably never will now, because it's less of a newsworthy topic than it was 3-4 years ago. But deciding not to do it felt really good in the moment.
You've probably honed your intuition on stuff like that over time. Like, when this just isn't worth it, like what do they say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like, in order for us to get this out, we'd all have to be working 12 hours for the next couple days, and it's just not,
and nobody wants to do that.
This is not worth it. It's not worth it.
Well, and oftentimes, I mean, it's also a good forcing function to do things that are concise or succinct, or more direct and to the point, because we know we all have the tendency to be, you are probably the person in the world that is the most interested in your work, and so we have the tendency to go a little bit overboard sometimes, and include more than is necessary or more than will really be appreciated by your audience or whoever you're doing this for. And so cutting the scope can also have a benefit of just making something more concise, more direct, more to the point, more likely to be consumed and shared. And
if you feel like something's off and you don't have the ability to ask someone else for feedback, I found just using time as a way to unearth what's wrong with it, because a lot of times if you just go to sleep and look at it the next day, you'll see what's wrong with it, or something you thought was a big deal, like I can't get this thing, something's just not working, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, actually it's fine.
I
don't know what I was thinking. So sometimes time helps. But I wanted to ask you guys, what about like some specific Dataviz things? What are you checking for? It's like, okay, this is good. This is looking good. My client's been on board. I think I'm ready to like send the final files. What are a couple Dataviz specific things you're looking for? Like for me, I'm reading through all my labels again. Did I label my axes? Did I label that, one point of that annotation, like is it spelled correctly? So checking like spelling, annotations, labels, anything else.
The one thing I always do, having made this mistake too many times, is do all of the percentages add up to 100.
Ooh, good one. Yes.
That's such an important one.
The first comment that is going to be on there when you post it. This only adds up to 94. What happened?
With 94, you can't be like, oh, it's rounding.
It's a rounding error.
I mean, there's a lot of things. I think one thing, if you haven't done this, like if you're making something that is meant to be a smaller piece of a larger project, a lot of times we're commissioned to make charts that might be going in a report or a website or a paper or something. Really thoroughly test how your visualization actually looks in its context. You've just been sitting there in Illustrator or Figma or Tableau or whatever you're working in and staring at it in isolation, and it might look wonderful and amazing. But when you put it at the intended size that it's meant to be used at, embed it within the page that it's going to be viewed within, it might look too small. You might realize your fonts look huge and goofy compared to all the other fonts on the page. You might realize that the rest of the page has all these really bright, distracting colors, and it makes your chart look like disappear, and you can't even see it. And so you want yours to be more attention grabbing.
That's a great one.
Because
it can like completely, like this completely fails now. We're not even close. Or it could be just like, perfect.
And especially when you're doing web design, I will say, or really at all if you're working in Figma, infinite canvas programs are very, I suppose it's the same case with Illustrator or anything, because you're often zoomed in. We're often working at like either 150% zoom, or you're working at 75% zoom because you're moving around. Frequently throughout the process, check your work at 100%, and you'll realize very quickly, like, oh, what? This looks weird at 100%.
Too tiny text on your annotations or on your axes or something like that. That's
zoom
a really
out,
easy
step
one
back.
Look at it on a phone, like, because you can guarantee that, like, no matter what format you're doing it for, somebody's going to see it on their phone. Probably quite a lot of people are going to see it on their phone. So
one funny thing I have noticed that I do on purpose now is I think something is ready. I will export it, and then I will start typing the message to my client and drop the file in there. And then like maybe I'll wait a minute, and then I'll go in there and open the file attached to the email and have it pop up and look at it. And a lot of times I'm like, oh wait, hold on. I forgot to change this. So sometimes I just like force myself to export it and drop it in chat or something. And then all the ideas will start.
Often I'll put it in like a Dropbox folder or something, and I'll send the folder to the client. So then I can quickly replace it after I've sent it when I've noticed all the issues.
That actually reminds me, a quick tip. Make sure it has a background.
You're
working in Figma or Illustrator, and it's just using the page background, and then you export it and you attach it to the email and you open it and it's in dark mode, and you're like, wait,
and you're like, no, that's not how it's supposed to look. I swear. I've done that too.
Yeah, keep that in mind. And then, Duncan, your phone comment reminded me, if you are building anything for the web, test it extensively on all kinds of different browsers and screen sizes, of course.
Yeah.
It works in Chrome, it won't work in Safari. And you will underestimate how long it's going to take you to track down all those different browser bugs and differences. And so leave sufficient time for that.
And if you're an iPhone user, you'll be like, everyone's got an iPhone, really. And if you're an Android user, you'll be like, everyone's got Android. So I'm sure it'll be fine.
Everyone's just like me. Everyone has this exact same screen size.
Exactly.
I'm standard.
Yeah.
I think
send it to one of your like friend WhatsApp groups or something like that and be like, does this look right to everyone?
Yeah. Well, I think in general, that's maybe a good thing. Like, I'm curious for you guys, because you do more client work than I do. How do you communicate to clients and try to like impress upon them how much time we should be leaving for, testing at the end, looking at it on different browsers, the phone, the edits, all those things, because we know how long it can take, but it might be a surprise sometimes to clients how long that can take.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, like it very much depends on the situation. I'm usually working in a situation where I'm the Dataviz specialist, and there will be a designer that then puts it into place and everything. And there is a certain amount of needing to just trust that person that they're going to do their job well. And I think that often applies to these kinds of questions. You send it off, and then, as much as you want to see it in context, as you say, it isn't always possible. Because, you're just you're not at that part of the process yet. And there isn't really a thing for you to say, can you send it back to me in 4 months when you're about to publish it so that I can check that everything looks okay?
I think if Gabby were here, she would say, I absolutely do say that to my clients.
I'm certain that she does.
And not only do I do that, I also go in and fix their website and tell them to rewrite that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially for because I've done graphics for books before, and like you said, it could be it's going to be at least 4 months, 6 months, a year even. Once I did some graphics for a book, and then it was maybe 9 months. They came back and they were like, actually, for this one particular chart, the way that we ended up putting it, typesetting it, that text was too small on the chart. So can you make it larger? So sometimes you do just need to wait, and it's not like they're coming back with a big redesign or anything. It's just at that point, it should just be last tweaks. But one thing I like to do, to your question, Will, about like how do you help them do that, is to at the beginning of the project have a timeline. So of course it's not going to go immediately or exactly like that, but at least they can see, hey, we're leaving this chunk, I expect, or ideally we would have this amount of time at the end in order to be checking these kinds of things, last checks. But like Duncan said, I think that's all there's only so much you can control.
The other situation I come up against sometimes is that 6, 9, 12, 24 months after I've published something, especially if I'm working with sort of smaller campaigning organizations or something like that, they'll come back with like, I don't know, a query about like how something could be developed slightly, or, we've just got some more funding and we want to take this further or whatever. So another thing that I really like to do when I remember to, which isn't always, is when I send something off, I just write down some notes to myself about like the graphic and how it's been put together, some of the like methodological notes and things like that. It doesn't necessarily need to always go to the client. Sometimes it's useful for the client to have it, but sometimes it's just useful to just put it in a text file in the same folder that you're storing all the stuff in, so that it's there later. It's almost like putting comments in code.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't do that, and I really feel like I should. It has come to bite me in the past. Where I can't believe, I thought I was done with that, and I don't have any recollection of what I was doing here.
Who was this person?
Where is
who
this
made this
data
graphic?
even?
I mean, even just finding files is a struggle. So
just keep I can find the file, much less know what I did.
Just writing a note to yourself that's like, this is the link to the Google Sheet. This is the location of the file. And
this is how they interact.
And also kind of similar to that, actually, I think a practice that I don't do and want to get into doing is, like, a lot of my files live in Figma, right? But any day, Figma could just be like, yeah, we're changing our business model and we're not going to do this anymore. And so I think what I would like to also do is probably just like save SVGs in the same folder. Again, they don't need to go to the client, but keep them for yourself so that you can get into that thing in an open format in the future and work on it and redevelop it if you need to prepare it in a different way.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think they were really good about this. So we were not good about it on Dataviz, but at Axios, our illustrators were really good about keeping, like, you know, they would be making photo illustrations. And so they're working with usually like a bunch of raw images that they're cutting out pieces of them in Photoshop and collaging them together essentially into one big file. They were really good about organizing their files and having, like, this is the master folder. Here's all the raw images. Here's all the processed images.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Here's all the cutout versions. Here's the final composite with all the layers. And it's a lot of work when you're doing it up front, but it absolutely, like, it pays dividends.
It pays off when you need to go back.
Yeah, you're like, thank goodness. This smart person.
Yeah, do it for future you. But also, I was going to mention one thing, Ali, that your comment about sleeping on it reminded me of. If you can budget that into your timeline, absolutely do it, because inevitably, like sleep for your health and you know, your well-being, but also see if you can budget in, like, if I can afford to, if I'm working on a project that's not super timeline sensitive or where I have the luxury to do this, I will definitely try to, like, finish the project, even the last 80%. So I think, and then wait, like, go away from it for a day, a week, however long you can take, and come back to it with fresh eyes, because you may think it's perfect, but you will inevitably realize that there are many things that you could
I can't believe I left it like that.
And a lot of times they're very obvious, like you said. I can't believe, oh, how stupid, I didn't realize, you know, and it only takes 5 minutes to fix it or something, but you just wouldn't have seen it in the moment when you were so like sort of tunnel visioned on it.
Yeah, one thing that I do notice sometimes when I do that is just which you could do without having to sleep on it, but it's just like double checking proportions. Like, okay, if in a simple bar chart, like this one says 20 and this other bar says 10, is it roughly half the size of it? You know, I just do like some quick looks, proportion looks like that, because I mean, how embarrassing is that if you are a Dataviz professional and Dataviz isn't even correct? Because, you know, a lot of times people like to be like, oh, you know, someone's trying to be misleading, but often they just, like, the label got moved or they typed a 1 instead of a 10. Like, you know, it's usually just simple mistakes like that. So just taking another quick look, you know, you're looking at labels, annotations, text, proportions. And also, I like to read the text out loud, because sometimes you miss the, you know, or an or something, and you just sound like you don't know how to speak English. Like, sorry, I was just like, I've read it so many times and I was typing fast, and so reading all the text out loud. It's so easy.
In the publishing industry, the writer and the editor are different people, but then the sub-editor is a different person again. And it's like kind of what we're talking about here is sub-editing Dataviz, really. And so you just need to have a fresh pair of eyes every so often.
We would catch things all the time at Axios. We had a system. So every chart that we would publish, it would be, the creator would post it in our, like, internal channel for edits, which meant that at least one other Dataviz person was checking it. Ideally, more than one person was checking it, and they would go through, check what you said, Ali, check the spreadsheet, look at the values. Do they match what I'm seeing in the chart? You know, all those things.
Are they checking all of them, or are they spot checking?
Well, it depends. If you can check all of them, you should. Other times it would just be spot checking. But, you know, more often than not, like what's more important often, like you want to, generally what we would do is spot check between the data and the chart, just to be like, does this proportionally line up? Does this look right? Am I seeing an upward trend in the sheet? And I'm also seeing an upward trend in whatever you posted here. But more important than that is going in and checking the data itself to make sure that it was prepared correctly.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you're working with a program that's generating a chart, it's generally not going to make a mistake. If you give it the values, it's going to render the values that you gave it. And so if there's a mistake, it means you probably gave it the wrong values, because in your spreadsheet, you, like you said, typed a 1 instead of 100. You forgot to multiply by 10 or something, you know, whatever you needed to do.
You dragged a formula down and forgot to fix one of the values. Like that's a classic one.
Yeah. So that was more importantly what we would do. But even after that, again, it was checked by, we would have like, then the editor of the article would look at the chart. Does it make sense to them? The copy editor would look at it. Did we miss any periods or commas? So obviously that's a luxury of working in like formal publishing, where you have editors and copy editors to look at these things. But anybody can play that role, really.
Yeah. And if you're a freelancer, you know, there's nothing stopping you except maybe your contract with your client from subcontracting out. Like there are lots of copy editors out there you can hire, and just, can I have an hour of your time or 30 minutes of your time, whatever long it's going to take you to read this through this data story or this report that I have, and can you check for these kinds of things? You're not tied to not having that team. You can put together that team yourself and just make sure you get it approved by your client, because sometimes they don't like when you're subcontracting out, especially if it's more sensitive information. But a lot of times that's not a huge expense, and it can help your quality stay really high.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes as well, I will sometimes use my clients as my sub-editors. When I send it over, I'll say explicitly, can you look over this, double check that this looks right, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, you know, that's work that, you know, is on me. But having that extra pair of eyes is really, really valuable. And sometimes they do catch things, and, you know, then I can fix them because I've just been staring at it for so long.
Yeah, you're human.
And that's a you know, that's a reasonable thing to ask, I think, because you both want it to be correct. Your interests are aligned.
And I will mention also the editing process. I mean, we could go into a whole episode on the editing process, but in addition to those things I mentioned of just checking, like, did you do your math correctly? Does the proportions match? Actually, often the more important thing is to zoom out even further and be like, does this conceptually make sense? Like, can this data support the conclusion that I'm making?
Yeah, like you said, like the trend goes up and you're talking about a trend going up.
Right. Like a lot of people, you tell them like, look at this chart. Does this look right? And they'll be like, oh yeah, well, there's 5 numbers in your spreadsheet and that looks like what the numbers are on the chart. And yeah, you added your numbers up correctly. So great, thumbs up, like stamp of approval, without actually thinking like, wait a minute, is this even the right data? Does the data in the chart match what I said in the title of the chart? That's just a big one right there.
Your title might be like, sales of oranges are skyrocketing, and you've got a chart that goes down.
Right. Like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's also one of the reasons it can be really helpful to have, like, some of those errors, you do need to have somebody that really has some knowledge about it to catch. Like, they might know, oh, well, this data isn't appropriate for this very particular methodological reason. But to Duncan's point of just like, does this pass the sniff test? Anybody can check that. And it's oftentimes better to have somebody who's removed from the project, who wasn't involved in making it, to just be that sanity check for you.
Yeah, if they're not neck deep already into it, it's easier for them to be high level, since they're not in the weeds.
You might be listening to this and thinking, well, you know, that's so obvious to just like compare your headline against the thing. But there are absolutely areas in which this is more complicated than it seems, especially like climate change is absolutely one of them. Like, are you mapping emissions, or are you mapping emission savings, or are you mapping like reductions in emissions? Like, you kind of quickly get into all these negatives where you want to show something going up, but that means you need to show something going down to present that story. And it gets very, very complicated very quickly. And it's easy to get so like into the weeds on the data that you don't get that high level picture. So it's an easier mistake to make than you might think it is.
Yeah. Should we talk in our last few minutes about like, it's done, now what? What comes after it's done? Or what aren't you...
Other than sending the invoice.
Right. You've created the chart and you've hit the email that says, here's my chart. Now what?
I like Duncan's idea of writing some notes on to remind yourself what you did.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yeah. I will say there's a lot of, so also with the publishing thing, we used to, publish these big articles that were like, we'd worked on for a long time. And so it is very, very easy to either forget about or completely underestimate the promotion you need to do of a project. So if you've spent a lot of time on something, you want to put an equal amount of effort into making sure that it, gets the attention, or at least gets the opportunity that it deserves.
And we've got past episodes on promotion that you can kind of check out for more details on this. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the point at which you are hopefully more excited about this project. Like if it hasn't destroyed you, that you are the most excited about the project, and you should really like, grab that energy. So like, instead of just writing one Instagram post, write 5 that you can then trickle out over weeks or months or something like that, write 5 different versions of explaining what this is and what this does, so that you can then use that text in the future when you get called up in 3 months time and said, oh, can you just give us a blurb about this image? And then you're like, what was it about again? and it's hard to sort of like bring that enthusiasm back for it. Like tap into that enthusiasm, that adrenaline that is running through you of having hit send, and channel it into something productive that you can then use subsequently.
And I found too that a lot of times you forget some of the things that you've created. So if you're like, okay, now I need to be updating my portfolio because I feel like I've created some stuff, or maybe I'm applying for jobs now, and I'm like, what did I create again?
What have I done in the last 2 years?
Yeah, how do I even remember? Sometimes I'm just like scrolling through my Figma past files trying to remember. So like as much as you can, like, okay, I exported for the client. Now I'm going to drag a copy into just a folder that says like portfolio or something. So at least you can go back and remember, I did this image. I did this graphic.
Yeah, and I think having a plan also, even like a checklist of what needs to be done after something is published is really helpful. Because like Duncan was saying, you have 5 Instagram posts, and like what we used to do is actually, you'd come up with a timeline basically of promotion, because you also don't want to just dump everything on one day. It's not like I published it at 9 a.m. and by 5 p.m. I've forgotten about it and I'm moving on to the next thing. Like you should still be...
It's so easy to do that.
Right. It's so easy to do that. Also because you are probably to a certain degree over it mentally. You've been working on it for a long time and you're ready to move on to the new shiny thing that you want to get to. But if you have that timeline of like, I have pre-prepared, on Monday, I'm going to post these Instagram posts and this thing on LinkedIn. On Tuesday, I'm going to, do this, email my friends who whatever are interested in this and ask them to send it to their networks.
Tell them
about it. Whatever your list of things is that you need to do. And maybe on that list of things is like, add it to my portfolio, write up my notes about the project.
Put a blog post on my website, that kind of stuff.
Email the client and, send them some of the nice things that people have responded about this, so they know that people liked the work.
That's
ask
a great
them
one.
For a recommendation, whatever you want to do.
Put in a calendar reminder to follow up with the client in 3 months to see how it did. Like maybe they have there was this blog post was the most popular we had this year or something. And that would be, can I put that in a testimonial on my website? I mean, without following up, you would have never heard it, because I don't think it occurs to them like, oh, maybe I should tell so-and-so about it. So
because they're like jumping from project to project just like you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's not done when the chart is done. Maybe that's a good a good lesson.
That's where we end it.
Start back in.
Yeah. It's never done.
Things are never done.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think we went through a lot of stuff and we developed a lot of interesting tips. And I hope that you guys found that useful. Thanks for joining us today. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can join our Elevate Dataviz learning community at elevatedataviz.com. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.